I'm doing it.
Gonna be a lot of irate citizens when they find out that they're paying for water that they're not gonna get.
Oh, that's all taken care of. See, Mr. Gitz, either you bring the water to L.A., or you bring L.A. to the water.
How are you gonna do that?
By incorporating the valley into the city. Simple as that.
How much are you worth?
I've no idea. How much do you want?
No, I just want to know what you're worth. Over 10 million?
Oh, my, yes.
Why are you doing it? How much better can you eat? What can you buy that you can't already afford?
The future, Mr. Gitz. The future.
Hi, Mal.
Oh, hi.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's nice to see you both again.
You too.
Yeah.
It's been 2 years.
Oh, has it? Oh,
I
so
took
we
a look.
did
Almost-
The Graduate, but we didn't do Working Girl. Ah.
Yeah, well, it was the Working Girl. Was that? I don't know the order, but I guess it really.
Yeah,
was.
every year. Basically, it's sort of come down to every year
Okay.
that we're doing a Sam movie.
Oh, okay. So maybe next year, Rosemary's Baby or something.
Ooh, yeah.
Probably.
Possibly.
We've
There's
really
there's
wanted to do that. Sometimes they screen it separately, and then we can't do it. Or at one point, we were going to do Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf too.
Oh yeah.
We
I love
wanted
that
to
one.
do it for Valentine's Day.
Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? Right. The anti Valentine's Day movie. If ever there
Right.
was one. All right. Well. I guess we could just kind of just jump in.
Mhm.
Since the screening is sold out, but I guess we can just talk about this. I don't know. We'll see where the conversation goes. All right.
I mean, I want to say at the outset that, and I did check with Jenny McCormick, the incredible mastermind behind Everything Ace, American Cinema Editors, to make sure this is true. But this is really the Metrograph series that they do. Ace presents, through America every month. It's the only one that's ever. This is the first time that's ever happened, that a non-studio sponsored venue in a commercial theater celebrating editors, screening, and so the people that are there's some editors, but they're mostly cinephiles, and they trend young, which is really fun because Molly is their generation. She's like sort of the typical age for the audience, and we're right, Ma? And then we're showing movies that are not of their generation, and they mostly know them. I mean, the show of hands
Right.
after The Graduate was
Yeah, a lot of the time it's their first time seeing it, which is cool. I mean, even when we did The
Or
Graduate,
at least on a screen.
like on a screen, but so a lot of the time, even just for the first time ever, when we did the Graduate event, Colin Farrell was there, and he said it was his first time seeing The Graduate. So it's amazing the people that come, but also the people who, I mean, I think it's great that so many of them get to see these movies. I wish I had seen Chinatown for the first time on a big screen, so it's great.
Well, I can shockingly say I did. The first time I saw Chinatown was on a big screen.
Yeah.
And I can still remember sitting there with my father, who took me.
Mhm.
And then when Jack Nicholson is confronted by Roman Polanski, in the film, and he takes out his switchblade to cut his dad covered my eyes. What was 1974?
Yeah.
So I was maybe 10 or 11. I don't know what my dad was doing, taking me to Chinatown. I didn't follow. I don't know that I followed much of the plot, but it's still challenging to follow the plot because it's such a complicated story. But it's one that keeps paying back with each repeated viewing. So eventually, you could just sort of get the idea of what's going on, and the subtext, which is really wild,
It feels time. I feel like every time I've seen it a lot of times, and I feel like every time I watch it, I'm still putting the puzzle pieces together. And I think that's actually part of the fun in it, is even when you've seen it multiple times, you're still, what is it about? What's, because you have the Evelyn storyline and you have the water storyline and how they intertwine. And then on top of all of that, you have the character arc of Gideys, who you're trying to kind of figure out what his deal is. There's these references to Chinatown and his history and his past. And, it's interesting because
Yes.
it's really, I was saying to Bobbie, I was saying this movie is really a movie about trauma. The trauma of, obviously Evelyn is the most obvious sort of front-facing trauma, right? But then you have Gideys. Obviously, Gideys experienced trauma during his time in Chinatown, which has led him to pursue this other life, and the trauma of the land in California from colonization and all this stuff. So there's just like I was about to say you could write a book. Someone has written a book, Sam Wasson's book, The Big Goodbye, which is one of the most gorgeous books I've ever read about making a movie. So there's just, like you're saying, there's just so many layers to this movie.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that book up. I was going to pull it off the bookshelf, but wasn't sure we were going to talk about it. But I was fortunate to have Sam come on and talk about that book. Yeah, no, I remember Robert, what's his name? Robert McPhee, the screenwriter guy who did that seminar. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
He would do that on screenwriting. And his I mean, Chinatown was the film that because I went with a friend and it was so much fun to do that. And he's all talking about John Huston's, his character's desire for immortality, and hence why he raped his own daughter. It's an incredible story. Just the layers. Robert Towne wrote the screenplay, and it was edited by someone I vaguely remember. No, wait, but Bobbie and Sam O'Steen edited the film. This was it. You guys, when did you meet Sam again? I think we talked about this last time, but
I actually met him a few years after Chinatown was made.
oh, right.
And I told him that I loved the movie. I think I may have even said it was my favorite of all his films. And then I said, but I hated the ending. And he said, yeah, you'll always remember it. Indisputable. Yeah, I mean, you guys were talking about the complicated plot. I mean, he said, he made a joke like, I never really understood it. I said,
Really? Uh-oh.
Sam's humor.
Okay.
But no, it was a struggle. And one of the things that was a challenge too is, when directors run a rough cut for the first time, they want to kill themselves or throw up or whatever. And what they're doing is they're looking at maybe the wrong things, like bad matches or technical problems or things they wish they hadn't done. And he tried to keep Roman away from the film as long as possible because it was the first film he'd ever directed where the plotting is so tricky and complicated. So having, everything is Gideys' point of view, Jack Nicholson's point of view. He's in every scene, every shot. But to make sure the audience isn't ahead of the story, isn't behind the story, and is right where they need to be.
Oh, right.
They're not confused because confusion bursts your bubble, as an audience. So he tried to keep him away so he could be as objective as possible. And he had a great saying about objectivity, which is true for all artists. Sam got this from his mentor, who said, if you pick at a sore, it'll never heal. If you can stay away for a little while, you'll be amazed at how objective you'll be. And that's Ralph Dawson was the one who told him that. So
Who?
Ralph Dawson. I think
That was his mentor.
Yeah, that's his mentor. But it's and I think some of the issues with the plot is also Robert Towne's original version was much more complicated. There were many more characters, many more subplots.
It's
And some
amazing.
of, yeah, so sometimes there are little strands that linger on that may not totally come full circle and make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When she talks about having lovers,
Hmm.
and you never understand, did she really have lovers outside the marriage? And then it turns out there was a plot line at one point where she did
I see.
a lover. So, you don't think that much about it, but they couldn't close all those gaps. So there is that element of it too. Besides, as Molly said, the two threads. You have this Evelyn secret and then
Evelyn
the
Mulray.
water. Yeah, and then the water corruption
Right.
story,
Utility.
which seems pretty relevant in these times.
Yeah, this movie unfortunately ages well in terms of like, oh, I feel like these issues are still prevalent.
Maybe
Yes.
more than ever.
Yeah. Well, again, a sign of a great film. It's you create a relevance, a sort of a permanent relevance for it. You know.
Hmm.
I mean, Chinatown is one of a handful of movies which really will never, ever, I think, be stale. It just won't.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's just a remarkable feat. It will have a screening at the Metrograph on the uh, 25th, no, 26th, on Saturday, April 26th.
Mhm.
This
That's
Saturday at
48
6.
hours from now.
Yeah.
At 6:50, what I'm going to say to folks if they happen to see this is you can, stand outside and just hope for the best. Maybe you can get in. You never know.
Yeah, usually
But
there's a few. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And um, let's see. You're both doing the Q&A?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Molly moderates, which is really
Oh,
fun
that's
because
great.
I'm usually a moderator, so the
Yeah,
tables are turned.
right,
And Molly runs her own theater school. She's taught theater.
right.
She's
Yeah, yeah.
great with the audience, so it's
Hmm.
really, and like I said, it's there are editors in the audience. There's also so many people that that may see it through her eyes in a way, you know what I mean? So she's relating to them, and I think that makes it a really fun sort of combination of the two of us.
Mhm. Yeah, we try to do a fun balance of, talking about the technical editing and
Hmm.
the art of editing, but also, telling fun stories about the making of the movie and sort of, whipping out a Jack Nicholson impression maybe at some point. So
Hmm.
we try to make it fun and entertaining. But yeah, Bobbie is usually the one, moderating when she does events with Ace and other places. So I think it's a fun sort of turning of tables for her to be essentially the one being interviewed.
Right, sure. And have you been interviewed for any films that outside of Sam's, as far as being on the A side of the Q&A?
Uh, Very good question. I've been interviewed about myself, but no, I haven't. So that's
Hmm.
what's
She
really.
does do commentary for the Criterion collection for movies
Oh,
that aren't Sam's. She actually just did the Risky Business one that is releasing soon. So
That's
yeah,
Richie Business was not Sam, but yeah, I did that with Richard.
um,
right.
and Carnal
With
Then
who?
Knowledge.
Carnal Knowledge is the one that's coming out in this summer, I think July. And
Oh.
I just did, yeah, I just did a piece on my own, just talking about I'm sure they're going to play footage under some of the things I talked about because I get very specific about
Hmm.
contributions, but I've done I did something on The Graduate for Criterion a while ago, and Don't Look Now, and Hard Day's Night, and different things.
Wow.
I'm
Wow.
always trying to promote, they're very supportive of this, that there's never enough about editing anywhere. So, this is my
Sure.
mission to celebrate the editors, and it's nice when it can go into something like Criterion, which is just so people who may not think about editing get exposed to it, you know.
I agree. Yeah. And, you're referring to all the cinephiles that come. I mean, I do think, for, again, this is an opportunity to see these kind of iconic films on finally the way they were meant to be seen. For instance, this screening of Chinatown is going to be a 35 millimeter print, and
So beautiful. John
yeah.
Alonzo's cinematography was just incredible. I mean, that sort of burnished look of that 30s era and the costumes and
Oh, every
the
detail.
every detail. It was so, but you know what Polanski said, which is interesting, is he didn't want it to be, in a way, it's an homage to film noir, and yet it's different. Um,
Hmm.
it's an homage to the look of the era, but in terms of the characters, she is not really a femme fatale, although you think she might be
Right.
first. And he's a little different from like the Philip Marlowe classic. He's a snappier dresser. He's a little more of a smartass. And I think he's more of an idealist. You know, there's
Hmm.
a part of him, he's so cynical, and yet he's romantic and an idealist, you know. And it's funny because like Robert Towne didn't want him to have a romance with Evelyn Mulwray, with
I
Faye.
didn't know that either. Oh.
Yeah, I mean the ending too. They didn't he didn't want that ending. But
Mm.
but what Polanski said about the romance is it sets the stakes higher, and then there's that haunting reference to Chinatown where he was in love with someone else who died, you know,
Hmm. Yeah.
and it's just full circle, you know.
Yeah,
Right.
Town wanted more of like a bittersweet ending where she kills her father and she doesn't get away with it, so that's the tragedy. But then Gittes helps the daughter get away, and Polanski just was like, "That's not what would happen. He's too powerful," you know. So once again, the
Right.
relevance to today, it's like, oh yeah, he
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
probably would. John Huston's character probably would get away with everything, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the yeah, the very end, he didn't even know exactly how he was going to shoot it, or he was writing the dialogue for the end at the day before they shot. And so this whole thing at the end with the crane shot, the
Hmm.
27-foot crane shot, that was the cinematographer said, why are you doing that? The whole film is shot so naturalistically. You know, it's very, oh, that's the other thing Polanski said. He said, quote, the camera eye of the 70s. So it wasn't shot like a 40s film noir. It was much, but of course, that's Polanski's style, which is fluid and
Hmm.
probing and, you know, but there was also technology. I mean, you had the Panaflex camera, which
Hmm.
was only on the market like 2 years before China, a year before Chinatown was shot. So the flexibility, the portability of cameras and sound and faster film, of course. So then he does this crane shot, and he said,
Hmm.
"But it's a coda. It's like an opera. Now
Yeah.
we've been subjective all this time, and now we're going to be objective and look back on this big pull away from this saga and a coda to the movie, you know."
Yeah. I think it's more of a love of Hollywood. This movie
Yeah,
is a celebration of Hollywood and how it can make us tell a story like this.
that's so interesting you say that because that's exactly what he said. He said that
Mm.
was part of it, like the old Hollywood. This was a tableau kind of thing, and
Yeah.
a final tribute in
Yeah.
the visuals of that. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure the term neo-noir was a little later, but I could be
yeah,
wrong.
yeah. I think it
This
was.
obsession with, making films as homage to, I don't know that Polanski was all that caught up in that mind frame yet. It was more of a, right? Story
Right,
from
and I
that
think
time and trying to be, I guess, faithful to what that time looked like, but not as making a film that might have been made 30 years earlier necessarily,
right. I mean, I think
or
in a
40.
way that Chinatown is just its own category.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah,
it because
certainly
it
is.
this um blend of different elements that made it just its own thing, you know.
Hmm.
It's very 70s in some ways, even the political part of it, you know.
Hmm.
There were so many films made. It was a Watergate era.
Hmm.
Um, I mean,
Well, yeah, part of a
Vietnam
movement
hadn't
of
happened that much before. It was
yeah,
the
right.
cynicism after the
Yeah,
idealism.
yeah, and there was a bunch of films that came out right around that time, of course, right? That were had the themes of paranoia
Hmm.
um as central to the story,
Mhm.
right? So this could definitely be part of that group of films
Hmm.
And this whole thing about the history of LA
network.
too,
Hmm.
yeah. The history of LA and water, it's still very relevant. It's an unnatural city. It should not, it's a
It
desert.
shouldn't
Why
exist.
are all those lawns in Beverly Hills? And just this whole the value of the water and the abuse of the greed in terms of property and what did they say? LA was always a boom economy.
But yeah, it's like a booming city. It just keeps booming. Yeah.
Yeah, and the heartbreak of this sort of this artificiality, and you can take the word artificiality and apply it to a lot of parts of
Yeah,
um, Los Angeles.
for sure. Um, the people from Los Angeles that might accidentally be watching this might not like that.
Well, I'm from LA.
Yeah,
That's my hometown, so
right. Yeah. So there you go. You have your right. So Molly will be interviewing Bobbie on Saturday after the screening.
Hmm.
Is it after the screening? It's usually is, right? So you can make references and people will understand them.
Yeah,
Uh,
that does help. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's again this Saturday. Well, probably I could say tomorrow when this becomes, if I may, or might even get super ambitious. Maybe it'll be today. My partner is leaving town for 4 or 5 days, so I might have even time tonight to get this out. Now, could you guys? I don't know if you know much Michael Taylor, who is instrumental in not only bringing us together now a couple of times, but also instrumental in creating this series. I know he's not doing it
yeah,
alone, but he
I
is a
yes,
big
absolutely, yeah.
force behind it.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Michael Taylor and Joseph Krings were both.
Right,
I checked with this. They both had this brainstorm, a brilliant
right,
idea.
yeah,
And now, in fact, it's so successful that the Western
yeah.
of of Ace is now they're doing. There's a Western version, an LA version at Vidiot's, and they do it now.
That's great.
And I also wanted to say, so there's the next event after ours in
Yeah, I
May.
was going to bring it up. I'm glad you did.
Yeah, yeah, is with
Celebration
Charlotte.
of Maisels.
Yes, the Maisels. They called her the third Maisels, which was a blessing and a curse, I think, for
Charlotte.
her. So Charlotte Zwerin was co-directed and edited films with them. She also did films on her own. She did a
Hmm.
film with de Kooning and Thelonious Monk about them.
Wow,
But yeah, but the ones they're showing are Salesman and Gimme Shelter. And it's
amazing.
cool because there's two consecutive panels. So one's at 4:15, that's Salesman, and 7 is Gimme Shelter.
See, right.
And
Then folks can go to
she edited and
either or
co-directed.
both
Yeah,
Mhm.
either both. And they're going to be, the panel is going to be um, colleagues and collaborators. So it's
of Charlotte's.
of Charlotte,
Hmm.
yes.
Mhm.
And
Hmm.
so it was very cinema verite. She was part of the movement of,
Totally.
revolutionizing. And because she was an editor and director, it's particularly interesting because as is typical, the editors don't usually get a light shining on them as much as directors. So
That's
yeah.
true. Yeah, no, and that is on the 25th of May, and tickets are available right now on the
Uh,
Metrograph website.
is it 31st?
Do I have the date wrong? I thought I saw 25th, but maybe I'm wrong.
Let me see. It might be 50.
Um, I was lucky enough while you're looking, I was lucky enough to actually interview Albert. Well, I met him many, many times over the years, but I got him on this podcast early on. So I actually uh, have been doing this podcast that long where I had on Al Maisels was an early guest. Uh,
Oh my God, that's amazing.
yeah.
I'm just trying
It's the 31st.
30,
Okay. It's the 31st. I
31st.
apologize. So on May
No problem.
31st, what is, all right. Well, you know, people, if it's a wonderful opportunity. I'm sure there's going to be quite a great discussion. I mean, those are two just unbelievable documentaries. I mean,
Yeah.
Salesman is, if any, I think I've seen it on the big screen. I don't know. I have copies of these films in my little collection. But
What's really great too is, because it's always so hard to talk about editing when you don't have show and tell. And this is something I've
right,
done different in my books. The first book I did with Sam, Cut to the Chase, which is the story of his life and his work. But then after that, I would use frame grabs, and I wrote a Pixar book where we actually got media. But in this case, we're screening the actual film before we talk about it. And it makes it so much
right,
better, that opportunity to do that. And not just, sometimes editors have panels and they show clips. I do that frequently, which is good too. But
yes,
so, for example, like a big part of Chinatown is the peeling away of the layers of her secret, Evelyn's
hmm
secret, Faye Dunaway's.
right, right,
And we're going to talk about very specific techniques Sam used, like who to cut to when, how long to hold on them, what beats to take. The person, Sam always said, never cut for a line, only a reaction. So, the person who's speaking is not necessarily the person you want to look at. You want to look at the person the audience is dying to see if there's any secrets that are being revealed. If we
right.
if we got into the specifics like that, just at a panel, people would say, I don't remember or
Yeah,
whatever, but they will have just seen it. So
Yeah.
you can reference it specifically.
Well, and it's this great combination because you have film editors in the audience who are appreciating this
right,
analyzing and this breakdown, but then you also might have young people who are interested in filmmaking or early career filmmakers who, I think if you haven't studied editing, it might seem like a very abstract art form. Like how do you make the sausage of being a film editor? And so the fact that these ACE events give these like very concrete sort of discussions and analytics of editing, I think is great. Maybe you're a 22-year-old in film school who wants to get into editing and you want to sort of know, how do you deconstruct? How do they decide how long to hold on people, when to zoom in, how to cut, and so I think that's why we get such a great mix of audience, because you get both of those side of camps of people. So I think that these, we went to, in December, we went to see Carol. They did Carol, and watching the editor of Carol
yes,
talk about, how he cut that movie was so exciting. And it's such a, speaking of gorgeous cinematography, oh my goodness, and I,
yeah,
I
beautiful
feel
film.
like I learned so much from what
Right.
that editor was talking about in terms of the movie. So it's entertaining, but it's also very educational.
I mean, it's like how would you possibly know what an editor does? Because if it's really working, you're not even supposed to notice it.
Well,
And if
right.
you
Their
don't,
their role is to to disappear, and but their impact is probably as much as the director is just it could leave people with who are in film school with the idea of maybe becoming editors if they're not
Mhm.
as quite as interested with being in the limelight as a director might be.
Yeah, exactly.
well,
Since
that's
the
of
auteur
course that's
theory.
the part of the fun of interviewing editors is they're
Yeah.
they're always surprised people even care. They're used to being in a dark room where nobody notices them,
Yeah.
and they're so
Yeah.
of course they're always wonderful, but they don't think they're going to be, and
Yeah.
they're sort of blown away that people appreciate their work. So it's also there's the joy and
Yeah.
shines the light on them when they so they're the unsung heroes of film.
I want to mention last night my partner and I we were watching a film where I mean I would love to talk to the editor. I don't know if you've had a chance to see soundtrack to a coup d'etat yet.
Oh, I haven't seen it, but I
Oh
was
no.
actually just listening this morning to Brett Goldstein talk about it on his
Oh,
podcast, and now I am dying to see it. It sounds
yeah.
amazing.
It's a very powerful film. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a jagged pill, but it is a beautiful and beautifully edited documentary. Just
Hmm.
amazing job. Yeah, I would love to I have to try to work on it's hard because, when you do this type of podcast, you always have to get these people on before the film comes out, and afterwards they're much less motivated. But sometimes I like the distance that is created between and they come on later to talk about it. It's kind of and it's less promotionally oriented, which is nice too for me. you know.
Yeah.
Um, Once again, Chinatown is going to be screening at the Metrograph downtown on Saturday at 6:50 with a Q&A with the O'Steens. And next month on the 31st will be this double feature of the Maisels and Charlotte Zwerin's. It's going to be Salesman, which if you've never seen is just one of the, seminal
Yeah.
verite films, and of course, Give Me Shelter, and that's coming up. Guys, thank you so much for. I mean, I want to do this over and over. If you're okay with it, we could continue
Oh,
doing
yeah.
this.
That'd be great.
On an
For-
annual basis.
Yeah, I mean, it's wonderful. We really appreciate because we really like to shine the light on this series. It's so wonderful.
Yeah, and I'm sorry we missed Working Girl. That's a Shonda, but but we
That
can
was a
look.
lot of fun.
Yeah, I love that movie, and I think Melanie Griffith is her finest work as an actor, and it's just a great Mike Lee, um, Mike. Why am I all of a sudden I'm having a
Mike
senior mind.
Nichols.
Mike Nichols. Yeah.
Very
Oh,
80s.
very 80s, very 80s. But it kind of, Mike Nichols. It's sort of a playing with 80s, hair and but at the other, but completely making up for that. It's like you might think that he's poking fun, or the film is making fun of Melanie Griffiths, but it turns out to turn that on its head, and that's what works so well about that film.
He had her watch Pygmalion.
Oh,
No, it's
that
very
makes sense.
much of a class commentary, and
Sure.
the
Yeah.
cynicism at the end, I think most people didn't even necessarily notice it because when we pull back,
Oh, right.
she got the job of her dreams, but she's still in a cubicle.
Yeah.
know?
Right.
And that was Nichols' intention, the sort of dual message. But I think that great score, and she got Harrison Ford, so
Yeah. She
Can't go wrong there.
All right. Well, guys, this has been a pleasure once again.
Thank
And we'll
you.
dedicate this to Michael Taylor and what's
Joseph Krings.
Joseph Krings,
Yeah.
who's his
He was-
collaborator
Mhm.
in this series, the American Cinema Editors Presents, or ACE Presents, at the Metrograph. Thanks, and have a
Thank
great
you.
weekend. I hope it's a big success Saturday. I'm sure I'll be looking forward to hearing about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My
Thanks so
pleasure.
much. Take care.
Of course.